The night was quiet, but not peaceful. Inside a small and broken workshop, a young man worked with tired hands. He was a mechanic, a poor one, known in the town only for fixing machines that nobody else wanted to touch. His clothes were dirty with oil, and his face carried the marks of long days and sleepless nights. The sound of metal tools echoed in the empty room. Clink, clank, clink. He sighed deeply. The machine in front of him was old, rusty, and almost impossible to repair. Yet he kept working because if he stopped, he would have nothing to eat tomorrow. The mechanic had no family, no friends, and no one waiting for him at home. This workshop was his home. A single bed lay in the corner, next to shelves of spare parts. Sometimes he wondered if this was the life he was meant to live. Fixing machines that were already dying, earning just enough to survive, and then starting all over again the next day. He wiped his forehead with a dirty cloth and whispered to himself. Another long night. Another broken machine. Same story every day. But that night, something strange was about to happen. Something that would change his simple life forever. Outside, the sky grew darker. Heavy clouds moved across the moon. The streets were empty, and the only light in the workshop came from a single weak lamp. The mechanic leaned back on his chair, eyes half closed, when suddenly, knock, knock. He froze. Nobody ever came here this late. Customers never visited at night, and his neighbors rarely cared if he was alive or dead. Who could it be? The knock came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Slowly, the mechanic stood up. His heart beat faster as he walked to the door. He was not afraid, but he felt uneasy. Something about this night felt wrong. When he opened the door, his eyes widened. Two girls stood outside. They looked young, maybe 16 or 17, their clothes torn and dirty, as if they had been running for hours. Their hair was wet from the rain, and their faces were pale with fear. Please, the first girl whispered, her voice weak. Can we stay here? Just for one night. The mechanic blinked. He had expected a customer, maybe a thief, but not this. He looked at them closely. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, not like normal eyes. For a moment, he thought it was just the reflection of the lamp. But no, the glow was real. Still, he felt their fear. They were shivering, holding each other tightly. Who are you? He asked carefully. The second girl shook her head. We can't say. Please, just shelter for tonight. We'll leave by morning. The mechanic hesitated. He was poor and he had little space to offer. His life was already hard enough, and trouble was the last thing he needed. But something in their voices, something desperate, made him step aside. Come in, he said softly. The girls hurried inside, glancing nervously at the street before the mechanic closed the door. Inside the workshop, the air was warmer, filled with the smell of oil and metal. The mechanic brought out an old blanket and a little bread he had saved for himself. He offered it without a word. The first girl smiled faintly, though her hands shook as she took the bread. The second girl sat close to her, watching the door as if afraid someone might break it down. You're safe here, the mechanic said at last, trying to sound calm. No one comes to this place at night. But even as he spoke, he felt a strange weight in the room. Something was not normal about these two strangers. Their skin was too pale, and when the light touched their faces, he noticed faint marks, almost like scales, running along their necks. He tried to ignore it, but his mind was restless. Who are they really? Why are they running? And what kind of danger follows them? The girls whispered quietly to each other in a language he didn't understand. The sound was soft, almost musical, but there was something sharp in their tone, like fear mixed with anger. Finally, the mechanic leaned back against the wall, pretending not to listen. But his eyes stayed on them, sharp and curious. Time passed slowly. The workshop grew silent except for the ticking of an old clock. The mechanic thought he might sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he imagined those glowing eyes staring back at him. He tried to convince himself that they were just normal travelers, maybe sisters lost in the storm. Yet the image of the faint scales on their necks refused to leave his mind. And then, just before midnight, he heard it. A whisper. Not from the girls, but from something else. A strange sound, like wind curling through cracks in the walls. He turned his head, searching for the source, but found nothing. The girls, however, looked even more afraid. The first girl clutched the other's hand and whispered, "They're searching. They're close." The mechanic's blood ran cold. Searching? Who? He wanted to ask, but before he could, the second girl's eyes flashed in the dim light. Not human eyes, but something older, stronger, and dangerous. The mechanic's chest tightened. He had let strangers into his home, but maybe he had also invited danger he could not understand. He swallowed hard, his thoughts racing. Should he send them away? Should he ask for the truth? Or should he stay silent and wait for morning? But deep down he already knew. This was no ordinary night, and these were no ordinary girls. What he did not know was that outside, beyond the streets of his poor town, the shadow of an empire was already moving. And soon, his simple life would be caught in a storm far greater than anything he had ever imagined. The night was long, and the mechanic could not sleep. The two strange girls lay on the floor under his old blanket, whispering to each other in a language he could not understand. He had given them his bread, his only food for the night, and now his stomach ached with hunger. Still, he could not bring himself to turn them away. He sat in his chair, pretending to fix a broken clock, but his eyes kept drifting toward them. The lamp above flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the workshop. The girls' faces looked calm now, but even in their sleep, their hands clung tightly together, as if they were afraid of being separated. The mechanic shook his head. "Why did I let them in?" he whispered to himself. "They are trouble. I know it." Yet his heart told him something else, that they were not ordinary runaways. Something about their glowing eyes, their strange voices, and those faint marks on their skin. It all made him uneasy. Hours passed. The wind outside howled like a beast, rattling the workshop windows. Suddenly, the mechanic heard a soft sound. Not the storm, not the wind, but something else. A soft hiss. He leaned forward. One of the girls had shifted in her sleep. Her blanket slipped down, and for a brief moment he saw it clearly. Scales. Tiny, shining scales running along her arm, catching the light of the lamp like silver coins. His eyes widened. He nearly dropped the clock in his hand. What are they?" he breathed. Before he could look closer, the girl stirred, pulling the blanket back over herself. She didn't wake, but the secret was already revealed. The mechanic leaned back slowly, his chest tight with fear. His mind raced. Scales. Glowing eyes. Strange whispers. They're not human. The door creaked suddenly, making him jump. He grabbed a wrench, holding it like a weapon. But it was only the wind, pushing the door slightly open before he quickly shut it again. His hands trembled. He was not a fighter. He was not brave. He was only a poor mechanic. Yet tonight he felt like he was standing on the edge of something dangerous, something far beyond his simple world. The girls woke around midnight. The older one sat up first, rubbing her eyes. Her gaze fell on the mechanic, who was still holding the wrench. "You didn't sleep?" she asked quietly. The mechanic lowered the tool, embarrassed. "No. I was fixing something." She studied him for a long moment, her glowing eyes calm but sharp. Then she said softly, "You saw, didn't you?" He froze. "Saw what?" "The scales." His heart pounded. He didn't know what to say, so he stayed silent. The younger girl sat up too, her face worried. "We can't hide it forever," she whispered to her sister. "He knows now." The mechanic swallowed hard. "What are you?" he finally asked. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of fear and curiosity. The older girl looked away, her hands tightening around the blanket. For a long time she didn't answer. Finally she spoke. "We are not like you," she said. "We are different." "Different how?" She raised her arm, pulling the blanket aside. Under the dim light, her skin shimmered again, the silver scales shining faintly. Then, for just a second, her fingers curled, and long sharp claws appeared before returning to normal. The mechanic's breath caught in his throat. He stepped back, his wrench shaking in his hand. You're monsters, he whispered. The younger girl's eyes filled with tears. No, we are not monsters. Please, don't call us that. The older one placed a hand on her sister's shoulder, calming her. Then she looked at the mechanic again. Her voice was steady now. We are dragons. The word struck him like a hammer. Dragons. Stories of them filled old books and drunken tavern songs. Creatures of fire and power, rulers of the skies, destroyers of empires. But he had never believed them. Dragons were myths, legends told to children. Yet here they were, two dragon girls sitting in his workshop asking for shelter. He felt his knees weaken. Why come here? Why hide in a place like this? The younger girl spoke softly, her voice trembling. Because we had no choice. We had to run. Run? From what? Not from what? The older one said bitterly. From who? The mechanic frowned. Who? Their eyes met his. For a moment, the room felt colder, heavier, as if the truth itself was dangerous to speak aloud. Our father, the older girl said finally. The mechanic blinked in shock. Your father. He is not like other fathers, she continued. He rules an empire, a great and terrible empire. And if he finds us, you will not be safe. The mechanic's mouth went dry. His hands shook as he lowered the wrench. Dragons were real. Their father ruled an empire. And he, a poor mechanic with nothing to his name, had just given shelter to the daughters of a king. A dragon king. The workshop fell silent again. But the silence was heavy, filled with fear. The mechanic sat down slowly, his mind spinning. Two dragon girls. Powerful father. An empire. And he was caught in the middle. He looked at them again. Despite their secret, they looked fragile, human, even gentle. They were not breathing fire or tearing down walls. They were just two frightened girls, running from something too big for him to understand. And yet, deep inside, he knew one thing clearly. By letting them in, he had already crossed a line. There was no going back. Outside, in the dark streets, the sound of distant footsteps echoed. The mechanic's blood turned cold. The girls heard it too. Their faces grew pale. They're here, the younger one whispered. The mechanic gripped his wrench tighter, fear twisting in his chest. Whoever was searching for them was getting closer. And now, his workshop was no longer just a poor man's home. It had become a hiding place in a deadly game. The footsteps outside grew louder. The mechanic's workshop, once silent and lonely, now felt like the center of a storm. He pressed his ear to the door, his heart racing. Shadows moved on the street, and the sound of armor clinking carried through the night air. Soldiers. The two girls huddled together in the corner, their eyes wide with fear. The younger one whispered something in that strange, musical language. The older girl held her close, then looked at the mechanic. You must hide us, she said. Hide you? His voice cracked. From soldiers? They'll tear this place apart. Please, she begged, her glowing eyes locking with his. If they find us, we're finished. And so are you. The mechanic swallowed hard. His workshop was small, with almost nowhere to hide. But then he remembered the storage pit beneath the floorboards, where he kept old tools and spare parts. He hurried over, pulling up the wooden planks. Get in, he whispered urgently. The girls crawled into the pit, their bodies shaking. The mechanic dropped the planks back into place just as a heavy fist slammed against the door. Bang, bang, bang. In the name of the Empire, open this door. The mechanic froze, his stomach twisted with fear. Slowly he opened the door. 3 soldiers stood outside, their armor dark and polished, their helmets shining under the moonlight. Each one carried a spear, and their eyes were cold. Have you seen 2 girls pass by here? The leader demanded. His voice was sharp and cruel. The mechanic shook his head quickly. No, sir. No one comes to this place at night. I've been working. The soldier stepped forward, peering inside the workshop. His eyes scanned the room, resting on the small bed, the workbench, the piles of junk. For a long moment, the mechanic thought he would order a search. But finally, the soldier grunted. If you see them, you'll report at once. Do not test the Empire's patience, mechanic. You wouldn't want to make enemies you can't fight. Yes, sir, the mechanic whispered. The soldiers turned and marched away, their footsteps fading into the storm. The mechanic closed the door and leaned against it, his body trembling. He had just lied to the Empire's soldiers. If they found out, he would be executed. He lifted the planks again. The girls crawled out, their faces pale but relieved. The younger one clung to his arm. Thank you, she whispered. You saved us. The mechanic looked at them, anger and fear burning inside him. You lied to me, he said sharply. You didn't tell me how much danger you brought here. Soldiers are hunting you. Why? Why is the Empire searching for you? The older girl lowered her head. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a deep breath, she pulled back her cloak. The mechanic's eyes widened in shock. Wings, not full and mighty like in the stories, but folded, small and hidden. Dark scales shimmered across her shoulders, and faint sparks of fire flickered at the edges of her wings. The mechanic stumbled back, nearly dropping his wrench. You really are dragons. The girl nodded slowly. We are the daughters of the Dragon Emperor. Her words hung heavy in the air. The mechanic felt his legs weaken. The Emperor? The one who rules the great empire beyond the mountains. Yes, but why would his daughters be running? Why hide in a place like this? The younger sister spoke this time, her voice trembling. Because we are not safe in his empire. Our father is powerful, but his court is full of enemies. There are those who want us dead. The older girl's eyes hardened. If they find us, they will drag us back or worse. The mechanic rubbed his forehead, struggling to understand. He was just a poor man, a nobody. How had he become the protector of two dragon princesses hunted by an empire? You shouldn't be here, he muttered. You should have run far away. Why come to me? The older girl looked at him, her voice calm but sharp. Because you were the only one who opened the door. The mechanic sat down heavily on his chair. His life had been simple, boring, and predictable. Now, within a single night, it had become something else entirely dangerous, frightening, and unreal. He looked at the girls again. Despite their wings and scales, they looked tired, scared, almost human. He could see the pain in their eyes. You can stay for now, he said finally. But by morning you must leave. I can't fight soldiers. I can't fight an empire. The younger girl nodded sadly, while the older one said nothing. The workshop grew quiet again, but the silence was uneasy. The mechanic tried to return to his work, but his mind would not rest. He kept seeing the wings in his head, the scales, the fire. He kept hearing the soldier's voice warning him not to make enemies. And deep down, he knew the soldiers would return. As dawn began to creep across the sky, the mechanic dozed off in his chair. His dreams were restless, filled with fire and shadows. Then a sudden noise woke him. He opened his eyes and saw the younger girl standing by the window, her wings half unfolded. She was staring at the rising sun, her face calm but sad. You should not show those, he whispered sharply. She turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly. I forget sometimes. Hiding is hard when it is not who you are. The mechanic frowned. If someone sees you, you'll bring death to this place. The girl lowered her wings with a sigh. We didn't ask for this life. We didn't ask to be born into his empire. But now, there's no escape. The mechanic stood, walking closer. Then why not go back? He is your father. He rules everything. Surely he would protect you. The older sister's voice cut through the air. You don't understand. She stepped forward, her eyes burning. Our father is not like you think. He does not protect. He controls. And if we return, our freedom is gone forever. The mechanic stared at her, realizing the weight of their words. These were not just runaway girls. They were heirs of an empire, carrying secrets too heavy for their young shoulders. And somehow he had become part of it. Outside, the sound of distant horns echoed across the town. The mechanic's heart sank. He knew that sound. It was the call of soldiers. The girls heard it too. Their faces grew pale. "They're closing in," the older one whispered. The mechanic clenched his fists. He was no warrior, no hero. But the girls were in his care now, and whether he liked it or not, their secret was his secret. The horns grew louder, and the ground trembled with marching feet. The mechanic looked at the girls one last time. "Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're running from, I need to know everything. Now." The older girl met his gaze. Her wings unfolded fully this time, filling the workshop with a terrifying, beautiful glow. "Our father rules an empire," she said. "But he is no ordinary man. He is a dragon. And if he finds us here, not even your courage will save you." The horns echoed again, louder this time, rolling through the streets like thunder. The mechanic's stomach tightened. He had heard those horns before. They were not the horns of warning, not the horns of victory. They were hunting horns, a signal to search, to capture, to drag the guilty back in chains. The two dragon girls froze. Their wings folded quickly, and their glowing eyes dimmed. The younger one pressed herself against her sister, fear written across her face. "They are here for us," she whispered. The mechanic tried to calm his racing thoughts. His workshop was small, broken, and filled with junk. If soldiers came again, he doubted he could hide the girls a second time. But sending them out now, into the streets filled with marching men, would be the same as throwing them into a cage. His hands trembled as he reached for his tools, not because he needed them, but because holding something heavy made him feel less helpless. The older girl looked at him steadily. "You don't have to help us anymore. We understand if you send us away." The mechanic's jaw tightened. He thought of his empty life, the endless days of fixing broken machines no one cared about. He had been invisible, forgotten. But now, for the first time, someone had looked at him as if he mattered. "I'm already in this," he said quietly. "If they find you here, I'm finished anyway. So, we fight together." The girls stared at him, surprised. The horns stopped, replaced by the sound of boots striking the ground. The mechanic peeked through a crack in the shutters. Dozens of soldiers were spreading across the town, knocking on doors, dragging people out into the streets. Then he saw it. A banner of black and gold, marked with the symbol of a dragon's claw. The banner of the emperor. His heart sank. The search was not just ordinary. It was official, commanded by the throne itself. "Down here," the mechanic whispered, lifting the floorboards again. "Hide. Don't come out, no matter what happens." The girls hesitated, but the younger one obeyed quickly. The older girl lingered, her glowing eyes locked on his. "If they hurt you," she began. "They won't," he lied. "Just stay quiet." She finally climbed down, and the mechanic closed the planks over them, covering the spot with crates and tools. The pounding came moments later. Bang, bang, bang. "In the name of the Dragon Emperor, open this door." The mechanic forced himself to breathe, then opened the door slowly. 6 soldiers stood there this time, not 3. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his face, stepped forward. His armor gleamed, and his eyes burned with authority. "You were questioned last night," the captain said coldly. "We return because new orders have come. 2 fugitives were seen in this district. Girls, if you are hiding them, speak now." The mechanic shook his head quickly. "No, sir. I told the truth yesterday. I haven't seen anyone." The captain studied him carefully. His eyes narrowed. Then he stepped inside without permission. The soldiers followed, spreading across the workshop. They kicked open crates, overturned furniture, and stabbed their spears into piles of junk. The mechanic's heart pounded so loudly he feared they would hear it. He stood frozen, watching as one soldier moved dangerously close to the storage pit. The man raised his spear, ready to thrust it into the floorboards. "Stop!" the captain ordered suddenly. The soldier froze. The captain walked closer, studying the mechanic again. "You are poor," he said slowly. "Alone. A man with nothing. Such men often take bribes or hide secrets for coin. But you look more like a fool than a traitor." The soldiers laughed quietly. The mechanic forced a nervous smile, though sweat dripped down his neck. "Search is complete," the captain said at last. "They are not here." The soldiers filed out. The captain paused at the door, his scarred face twisting into a cruel smile. "If you are lying," he said softly, "the Emperor himself will burn this place to ash." Then he was gone. The mechanic closed the door and collapsed against it, gasping for breath. His whole body shook. He had never been so close to death. He pulled away the crates and lifted the planks. The two girls crawled out, their faces pale but their eyes bright with relief. "You risked everything," the younger one said. "Why?" The mechanic rubbed his face. "Because I couldn't hand you over. Not after last night." The older girl looked at him quietly, her gaze unreadable. Then she said, "You are braver than you know." For a moment, silence filled the workshop. But it was not peace. The mechanic knew the danger was not over. The soldiers would not give up so easily. "What happens if they return?" he asked. "I can't hide you forever. They'll search again. They'll tear this place apart." The older girl's eyes darkened. "If they return, we fight." "Fight?" The mechanic stared at her in disbelief. "Against an army? Do you want to burn my home to the ground?" "We didn't ask to drag you into this," she replied sharply. "But if the soldiers come, we will not let them take us alive." The younger one touched her sister's hand. "Stop. He's trying to help. We shouldn't argue." The mechanic sighed. He didn't know how long he could keep this up. But deep inside he felt something new, something dangerous but alive. For the first time, he wasn't just a poor mechanic fixing broken things. He was part of a story larger than himself. Night came again. The streets outside were filled with patrols. The mechanic barred the door and tried to sleep, but his dreams were filled with fire. He saw wings stretching across the sky, soldiers burning, and a massive shadow falling over his workshop. He woke in a cold sweat. The girls were asleep on the floor, but their faces looked troubled, as if their dreams were heavy too. The mechanic stepped outside quietly, just to breathe. The air was sharp and cold. Above him, the stars were hidden by clouds. Then he saw it, a light in the distance. Not the warm glow of torches, but a burning fire rising into the sky. The kind of fire no human could make. His blood turned cold. He knew what it was. The Emperor was coming. The night burned red. The mechanic stood outside his workshop, staring at the sky. Far in the distance, flames rose higher than the rooftops, twisting into the clouds like a fiery storm. It was no torch, no soldier's fire. It was alive, burning with power. His knees grew weak. He had seen many storms, many fires in his life, but never this. This was something greater, something that carried the weight of legend. Behind him, the workshop door creaked open. The two dragon girls stepped outside, their faces pale. "It's him," the older sister whispered. Her voice trembled, though her eyes were steady. "Our father is here." The younger girl clutched her arm. "We shouldn't have stayed. We should have kept running." The mechanic turned to them, his heart racing. "If it's your father, won't he protect you? He's your blood." The older girl shook her head. "You don't understand. To him, blood means power, not love. He is not here to protect us. He is here to claim us." The ground shook. The mechanic gasped as a thunderous roar rolled across the town, shaking the rooftops and rattling windows. People screamed in the streets, running from their homes, trying to flee. And then the sky split open. From the clouds descended a shadow larger than any building. Wings stretched wide, blotting out the moon. Scales burned like molten gold, and fire curled from massive jaws. The Dragon Emperor had arrived. The mechanic fell to his knees, his wrench dropping from his hand. He had never felt so small, so powerless. The Emperor's wings alone were larger than his entire workshop. His eyes, glowing like suns, fell upon the poor district of the town. With a single beat of his wings, the Emperor landed. The earth cracked under his weight, and fire spread through the air like sparks from a forge. The soldiers knelt immediately, pressing their foreheads to the ground. The captain with the scarred face shouted, "Glory to the Emperor! We have searched, but the fugitives hide among us. Command us, and we will burn the city to ash to find them." The Dragon Emperor's voice rolled like thunder. "No, I will find them myself." The mechanic's chest tightened. He felt the girls trembling behind him, their hands gripping his arms. "He knows we're here," the younger one whispered. The older one stepped forward, her face set with determination. "Then we face him. Together." The mechanic stared at her, horrified. "Are you mad? He's a dragon. You can't fight him." "We are not here to fight," she said quietly. "But we can't run forever. He will always find us." Before the mechanic could stop them, the two girls stepped into the open street. Their cloaks fell back, revealing their glowing eyes and faint wings. The Dragon Emperor's gaze locked on them immediately. His massive head lowered, and fire rumbled deep in his chest. "My daughters," he said, his voice shaking the earth. "You run from me, but you cannot hide. Do you think you can escape my empire? Do you think you can defy your blood?" The younger girl's voice trembled. "We don't want your empire. We don't want to be part of your wars, your cruelty. We just want to be free." "Free!" The Emperor's laugh was like an explosion. "There is no freedom for dragons of my blood. You are mine by birth, by fire, by fate." The mechanic stepped forward without thinking. His body shook, but his voice found strength. "They are not yours. They are not prisoners. They are just girls, scared and tired. You call yourself a father, but what kind of father hunts his children like prey?" The soldiers gasped, shocked by his words. Some even drew their weapons, ready to strike him down. The Dragon Emperor's golden eyes turned to the mechanic. For a long, terrible moment, the dragon studied the poor human who dared speak. Finally, the Emperor lowered his head, bringing his massive jaws close to the mechanic. The heat of his breath burned the air, and the mechanic felt as if his skin would melt. "You are bold, human," the Emperor rumbled. "Too bold. Do you know what I could do to you? With a single breath, I could turn you and this entire district to ash." The mechanic's legs shook, but he did not move. He clenched his fists and stared back into those burning eyes. "Maybe you can," he said quietly, "but killing me won't change the truth. You are not a father. You are a tyrant." Silence fell. Even the soldiers looked afraid, unsure what their emperor would do. The younger girl cried out, "Please, don't hurt him. He only helped us because we begged him to. Punish us if you must, but not him." The older girl stepped beside the mechanic, her small wings unfolding. "He showed us kindness when no one else did. If you harm him, you prove everything we said about you is true." The Dragon Emperor's eyes glowed brighter, fire burning deep in his throat. The mechanic braced himself for death. He could already imagine the flames swallowing him whole. But instead of fire, there was laughter. A deep, echoing laugh that shook the night. "Remarkable," the Emperor said finally. "A poor mechanic with nothing dares to defy me. You risk death for daughters that are not even yours." His massive head tilted slightly. "Tell me, human, why?" The mechanic swallowed hard. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "Because no one else would. Because they needed someone. Because someone had to stand." For a long, tense moment, the Emperor said nothing. The air burned with silence. Then, slowly, the dragon pulled back, his wings folding slightly. The soldiers looked up in shock. "You are a fool," the Emperor said at last. "But perhaps a useful fool." His gaze returned to his daughters. "You think you are free. You think you can escape me. But blood cannot be erased, and fate cannot be denied. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. Soon, you will understand that nothing escapes the shadow of my empire." With that, the Dragon Emperor spread his wings. The wind roared like a hurricane, nearly knocking the mechanic off his feet. The sky burned as the dragon launched into the clouds, his body disappearing into the night. The mechanic collapsed to the ground, gasping. The soldiers, still kneeling, quickly gathered and marched away, following their master's command. The street grew silent again, though the air still smelled of fire. The two girls knelt beside the mechanic, their eyes filled with relief and guilt. "You could have died," the younger one whispered. "You almost did," the older added softly. The mechanic coughed, his body trembling. But he managed a weak smile. "I guess I'm not very good at keeping quiet." The girls laughed nervously, though their eyes were still wet with tears. But even as they smiled, a heavy truth hung in the air. The Emperor had spared them, for now. But his warning was clear. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. The street was quiet again. The mechanic sat on the broken stone road, his hands still trembling. The heat of dragon fire lingered in the air, as if the night itself had been burned. He could still see the glow of the Emperor's wings in the sky, fading into the clouds. He should have felt safe now. The danger was gone, at least for the moment. But instead of relief, there was only heaviness in his chest. The girls sat beside him. The younger sister leaned against his shoulder, still shaking. The older one kept staring at the sky, her fists clenched. "He let us go," the younger whispered. "Why? He never lets anyone go." The older sister shook her head. "He doesn't see us as free. He sees us as his property. He thinks we'll return on our own. Or that he'll take us back later, when he chooses." The mechanic sighed. "Then what happens now? Where do you go?" The older girl finally turned to him. Her eyes glowed faintly, filled with worry and determination. "We can't stay here. The soldiers will return. And next time, they may not ask questions." The mechanic lowered his head. He wanted to protest, to tell them they could hide in his workshop again. But deep down, he knew it was true. His small world, his quiet life of broken machines and small repairs, had been shattered tonight. "You'll keep running," he said softly. The younger girl nodded. "Yes, but not forever. Someday we will stop running. Someday we will fight." Her words were small, but they carried fire. The mechanic looked at them. These strange girls who carried dragon blood yet feared their own father. They were powerful but also fragile, brave but also tired. And for the first time he wondered why fate had brought them to him. Why a poor human mechanic, who had nothing, was the one they had trusted. The girls stood, brushing dirt from their cloaks. The older sister looked down at him. "You risked everything tonight," she said. "You didn't have to. You could have handed us over, and your life would have been safe. But you stood against him." The mechanic gave a weak smile. "I don't know if it was bravery. Maybe it was just stupidity." But the girl shook her head. "No, it was something else. You don't see it, but you're not ordinary." Her words struck him strangely. He almost laughed at the idea. Him? Not ordinary? He was just a man with broken tools and empty pockets. Yet, the way she said it, it was as if she knew something he didn't. The younger girl stepped closer, her eyes soft. "Thank you for everything. We'll never forget." She reached out and pressed something into his hand. When he opened his fingers, he saw a small piece of shining crystal, glowing faintly like fire trapped inside. "It's a dragon shard," she explained. "It holds part of our power. If you're ever in danger, use it. It will protect you once." The mechanic stared at it, stunned. The shard pulsed with warmth, almost alive. He looked up at them, confusion filling his face. "Why give this to me? You need it more than I do." "Because you gave us a home," the younger girl whispered. "Even if it was only for one night." The older sister turned to the shadows of the street. Soldiers were still in the distance, moving through the town, searching. "It's time," she said. The mechanic stood, his throat tight. He wanted to stop them, to ask them to stay. But he knew he couldn't. The world chasing them was too big, too dangerous. So instead he said, "Be careful. Don't trust anyone too easily. Not everyone will give you shelter." The older girl gave him a rare smile. "And not every human is as foolish as you." The younger laughed softly through her tears. "Goodbye, friend." And then, with a shimmer of light, the sisters spread their wings. They were not fully grown, not yet powerful, but enough to lift them above the rooftops. The mechanic watched as they rose into the night sky, their cloaks fluttering, their glowing forms fading into the horizon. The street was empty again. The mechanic stood alone in the silence. His workshop was still there, small and broken. His tools were scattered, his pockets still empty. But nothing felt the same anymore. He looked at the dragon shard in his hand. It pulsed with faint light, like a heartbeat. And in that moment, he knew his life would never return to what it was before. He had faced an emperor. He had defied fire itself. And though he was still poor, still ordinary in every way he could see, the world would never see him the same way again. Somewhere in the darkness, a dragon's roar echoed, distant, but heavy with promise. The mechanic closed his hand around the shard. His story was not ending. It was only beginning.